The average videographer makes $31.28 per hour, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. But what if I told you that there's a way to break that ceiling? With 15 years in the video industry and 11 years running a video production company that's generated over $1.6 million in revenue, I'm here to share my secrets. Today, I'll answer top questions from Reddit on how to earn beyond $31 an hour, land new clients, and scale your video business without burning out. And to prove it's possible, here's screenshots from my financial software of the $537,915 I made in the last 2 years as a one-man band. Let's dive into question number one. Question number one is, what's the main source you guys find clients? For example, word of mouth, LinkedIn, etc. I'm very curious to know what I should focus on for my videography business. Okay, great question, because everyone needs to have clients. This is super important. If you don't have clients, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. Me personally, my clients come from a few different places. The first source of clients is from other video professionals. So sometimes that means that I'll network with other video production companies so that they can send work my way when they are super busy. Other times, because I've specialized in live streaming, they will actually bring me in as their outsourced live stream guru. So other companies, video companies, they are the perfect company to network with because they're in your industry. And the ones that are busier, that have extra projects, they might offload some of that work to you. Building those relationships is super, super helpful, super important. Where else do my clients come from? Well, they come from organic search. I've invested a lot of time in building a really nice website. I've also built out a Google business profile, so it's easy to find me in the search results. I spent a lot of time asking my past clients to leave me ratings and reviews so I can be found. Just general organic search. I try to look at this as one of two ways. Either you have outgoing leads where you have to go out and find them, or you have incoming leads where the leads actually find you. So when it comes to outgoing leads, it means I'm going out to networking events, I'm going out to Chamber of Commerce events, I'm going to maybe local BNI meetings or various other meetings. I'll look at Eventbrite to see what's happening locally in the area. Oftentimes there's way more than just the actual chamber event. There's all sorts of organizations and associations within any major city or town that you can find that are hosting events. That's the outgoing side, right? I have to be outgoing. I have to go out and find the leads. But where a lot of leads come in for me is the incoming side. That can be everything from a referral from a past client. That could be a referral from maybe a photographer who doesn't do video in-house, so they refer other people to me. It could also be a referral from another videographer who just doesn't specialize in that element of videography. If I were a wedding videographer, I might get referred wedding videos from a videographer that does corporate video. And that happens all the time, where videographers who don't specialize in any one thing are constantly looking for someone that they can refer to because they want to keep people happy. They want to be able to give them an answer, and they don't want to just say, oh, sorry, I can't help you. So clients come from two major places. It's either those incoming leads or those outgoing leads that you have to go out and find. But ultimately, if I had to pick any one particular option that I should be investing the most time in, it would probably be with other video companies in the industry that can refer work my way. I'm also going to be looking at those companies that are adjacent to the work that I do. That's going to be the photographers. That's going to be the website designers, the graphic designers, anyone in PR or marketing or social media. All of those people are adjacent to my work and they can easily refer more work my way. That's where I would spend most of my time if I needed to try to find new clients. Now let's move on to question number two. Question number two is video service pricing. I am fairly new in the filmmaking industry, 2 years of experience, and I feel like I'm good enough to start doing paid gigs. Does anyone have any advice on what I should be charging, or any advice? Pricing comes up very frequently in a lot of these questions and conversations happening online. And if you're still stuck trying to figure out your pricing, I actually have a free pricing calculator tool that's below this video. You can grab it for free. That link is just right down below. But basically, if I were starting in video again, this is the advice that I got. When I first started, I picked my price. I said it was maybe $50 an hour. But when I started at that price, a coach of mine said, on your next client that comes through the door, double your price. And it was hard to do that. To go from $50 to $100 an hour, I doubled the price. I was a little nervous, but the next client said yes. So I was at that new price. And then I went back to the coach and they said, well, double it again. And I said, okay, that's $200 an hour. And I doubled it to $200 an hour. I went out, the next client I got, they said, okay. And that was how I found my number. And then what happened was, as I was charging more and more, I got to a certain point where the client said, and they pushed back. And I started to figure out where that price wasn't going to make as much sense because there was a whole bunch of competition that was charging less and could do the same quality of work. So that was kind of initially how I figured out my numbers. But you might be thinking, like, if you're just starting or you've been doing this for 2 years, you might not know what to charge at all. And so there's a good chance that your numbers are lower than they should be. I would say that a lot of people are typically charging a lower number than they should be right off the bat. You should not be doing work for free. I don't believe in that. I think that you have to charge at least something, because then your client is invested in you and in the outcome as well. Your client's not going to treat that end product the same exact way if they have not put any money on the table towards that product. They're just going to think that it's disposable, and so it's very easy for them to walk all over you and to basically kind of lead the project along and tell you what they think you should be doing. And they're not the expert. You're working your way up to being that expert. And as you learn things over time, your financials are going to start to align better with your experience and your expertise and being able to come to the table. An exact number, I would say, let's work backwards. Let's look at a full year, right? So there's 52 weeks in a year on average. Let's say you work 1 week is vacation and 1 week is off for medical reasons. So you work 50 weeks out of the year on average. We're just assuming here. If you work 5 days a week times 50 weeks, that's 250 working days out of the year. Now, what I would do from there is I would figure out what my expenses are. So if I need, let's say, $5,000 a month to live, that's to pay my rent, that's to pay for my car, my food, a little bit for entertainment, some for savings, health insurance, all of those things. Let's say $5,000 per month. Times 12, you're going to get $60,000. So you need to do that math, $60,000. How much do you need to make each day over 250 actual working days? You do that math to figure out what that number is. Now, you know you're not going to work all 5 days out of the week. You're not going to fill your calendar right away with 5 new projects every single week. Let's say we do on average maybe 1 or 2 projects a week. Now do the math to figure out what that number is. So if you work 2 days out of the week, maybe 8 to 10 hours each day. So let's just call it 20 hours for math purposes. You need to divide that number down and figure out what that hourly number is. Once you get that, that's a good starting point for you. But I highly recommend, as you get more experience and more leads coming in, to do that doubling trick until you start to figure out where that price resistance is. So find your number, figure out what you need to be making hourly based on what you need to make for the entire year, divided by 250 working days, and assuming that you're going to work about 20 hours a week. Let's say you've got 20 hours a week times 50 working weeks, give or take. That's 1,000 working hours. You can do the math from there. All right, let's move on to question number 3. Question number 3 is receiving briefs from client as a video production company. How do y'all receive video production briefs from clients? Do you only take basic information from a contact form and get more information in a call? Or do you have a brief template that the client fills out? If you have a template, at what point do you send this out to the client? So I've seen a lot of different ways to do this. I've seen people do the whole like apply to work with me thing. And it's nice because it gives you some more information before you get on the call with somebody. But truthfully, I know that every time someone tries to fill that out, they're going to be lazy. They're not trying to write you a paragraph. And this is all information that you could get in a way faster fashion if you just jump onto a Zoom call. Personally, I'm sending a booking link that I've generated. And by the way, Google does this for free now. You can create a Google Calendar booking link. You don't have to pay for Calendly. You don't have to pay for any of those other services. Send that to the client. Say, hey, here's my booking link. Let me know when is a good time for you. This will schedule a Zoom call. We'll hop on it. I'll get to learn more about you. You can also spend some time to learn more about me. That's what I do. I jump on that discovery call with the client. That's my opportunity to learn more about what their needs are, to help them dream big about what they might need to accomplish, help them solve some of their problems, and share how video can solve problems for them. So it's ultimately getting them onto that discovery call. I don't like making them do all that work of filling out a form in advance because truthfully, I just know that I'm not going to get the right answers. Versus on the call, I can ask those follow-up questions. I can ask and find out more so that I can get all of the information that I need. And over time, you'll start to perfect this process. Maybe for you, if you're doing this, I would recommend maybe have your 10 or 15 questions written out to make sure you get the right answers, because that's going to allow you to develop what the outcome is for the person. It's going to help you in determining what that deliverable is, what that product is, but it's also going to give you the ability to kind of really dig in and figure out what their pain points are so that when it comes time to ask for the sale, it's very easy to say, hey, look, I realize you run into these problems a lot. One of the reasons why I think we can fix this is because video allows you to XYZ. Typically, those problems are we need more visibility, we need more clients, we need more sales, we need more awareness, we need more donors, things of that nature. It will give you the answers. And if you have those questions in advance, you can just kind of review them or have a little cheat sheet off to the side so you can get those answers and make sure all that's taken care of on the call. So when they get off the phone with you, there's no question of whether or not they want to work with you. There's no question of whether or not the videos you can create for them are going to solve their problems because you've already taken care of answering all those questions on the call. So that's what I would do. I would make that booking link through Google Calendar, let people book a time that's convenient for their schedule, get on that discovery call, and by the end of that call, you should be able to say, hey, I'm going to send over a proposal or an estimate to you and take the project from there. Now let's move on to question number 4. Question number 4 is day rate for an all-day conference. I've been given the opportunity to film at a conference all day, local, no travel from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. There will be presentations given to an audience in one room, most likely one stationary camera, and potentially some interviews that may require a 2-camera setup, as well as some B-roll around the campus. I'll likely bring 2 mirrorless cameras, tripods, wireless mics, a drone, possibly my gimbal. So far, no mention of any editing or post work. What would you charge for something like this? And before I answer this part, I just want to say that if they have not mentioned this, you need to get on that discovery call with them and find out what the deliverables are. And the only way you find out what the deliverable is going to be is if you figure out what their end goal is. If you get on that discovery call, find out what is it you want to achieve. Now back to the question. For context, I've been working as a videographer for B2B, that's business to business, in life sciences and biotech in Northern California for the past 10 years, but I've never really done any contract work outside of that. So I have no idea what to charge. I make about $78,000 annually. Any help from the fellow freelancers will be greatly appreciated. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, but ultimately it does come down to pricing, which I mentioned earlier. If you are trying to price something out and you're unsure of how to do it, my pricing calculator is linked down below. This is what I use for my projects, and I recommend for anybody else. It's allowed them to increase their prices and shows them a super easy method for pricing out anything just like this. Now, first of all, with this conference, it sounds like there's going to be multiple things happening, right? Like there might be a 2-camera setup, there might be a 1-camera setup in the main ballroom. First things first, I'm going to book 2 people on something like this. I am not going to try to do all of this myself. It's just a recipe for disaster. And I think that you can provide the client a lot of value if you have 2 people going about doing this. Second, I'm going to look at billing for a day rate, but you said that it's 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So is the event from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or is that when I need to get there? Like, is that including an hour of setup time, checking in with the audio guys, getting an audio feed, figuring out power? Have you talked to the client about maybe getting a riser so you can get up over people's heads? Like, these are things that you want to work on the planning call, is to figure out, is this something where I'm actually walking in the door at 8 a.m. and leaving at 6 p.m. or I need to get there at like 7 a.m., set up and be ready to go at 8 a.m. and then be done at 6 p.m. but I'm going to need until like 6:30, 7 o'clock to actually pack and get out of there. Because my day rate is usually 10-hour days. So that is not 10-hour days if you're coming in at 7 a.m. and leaving at 7 p.m. That is 12 hours. And you need to be billing for overtime for that. For me personally, it's about figuring out on that discovery call, what's the actual timing there. Once I've done that, then I'm going to bill my day rate. Usually for something like this, I'm going to bill a day rate of $1,800 per videographer. And then it's kind of up to you. You can bill additionally for equipment. If you're trying to be really nice about it, you can add in maybe $350 for like the camera package that includes camera, lenses, tripod, gimbal, wireless lav mic setup, maybe some lights for interviews, right? But if you want to be super, super nice, you can actually just cut out that expense entirely and say $1,800, that is my day rate. That's going to get me for 10 hours. Now, on top of that, if I'm doing more than 10 hours, then I'm going to do an hourly overtime rate. So 10 hours, $1,800, that's $180 per hour. Overtime, you should be billing more. So for me, it's probably going to come out to somewhere about $200 to $250 an hour for the additional hours. So if I'm billing for overtime and I'm there for 12 hours, chances are I'm going to bill at least another $400 for those 2 hours. Okay, so 400 plus 18, that gives me $2,200. If I want to be nice to the client, then I can negate that $350 equipment fee. So $2,200 per person. All right, so that's $4,400 for the 2 people. Now, if it was me, I'm going to go out and find somebody that I really trust, that I've worked with before, that I can bring on with me to handle one side of that outcome. So one side of the filming, whether it's doing the 2-camera interview setup or just the main ballroom keynotes, whatever it is you need to do, find that person. And you're not going to pay the $1,800, right? You're going to pay a lesser amount because you need to collect your overhead and your margins on top of that. For that, you might find someone anywhere from maybe $1,200 for the day, maybe $1,500 if they're really good. And then I will keep that additional on top because that's my margin, since I'm also going to incur expenses with paying them out, with managing them, with having to reach out to them and get them set up, making sure that they've got all their information they need prior to event day. So I'm making sure there's some margin on top of that. From, $4,400, I'll pocket my $1,800 for the day for myself, $2,200 if you're charging for that overtime. And then of course, I'm going to pocket a few extra $100 on top of that other person. So I might walk away with $2,500 just for me from filming. I've billed the client $4,400. I've paid out my freelancer. And that's before we even start to talk about editing. That's where you need to get on a discovery call and figure out what editing deliverables are also there. And that should not be something where the client dictates it. You can still take their ideas and their advice, but it's really up to you, the expert, to tell them, well, here's some deliverables that we've done in the past. Maybe I would recommend that you create a video that sells tickets for next year, because you mentioned that you had some lower ticket sales this year and you really want to make sure you can pump up the ticket sales for next year. Okay, let's go ahead and add that on. A promotional video, 2 to 3 minutes in length, to help sell more tickets next year. You also mentioned to me that you had a whole bunch of a need for social media content. Well, let's get that created while we're at your event. You can pull aside maybe 6 or 7 experts and we'll do an interview with them for 30 minutes a piece. And now we've got a ton of short form content that we can recycle for you throughout the rest of the year. So this is about you helping them to dream bigger and figuring out what those deliverables are. Let's move on to the next question. The next question is, what's the best way to hire videographers and photographers around me? I had multiple events for one day and needed to reach out to videographers and photographers close by that can go for me to one or the other event. Is there an app that I can post the details and payouts on and have people reply and stuff? I already posted on Instagram. Where else would you guys suggest I post in the Riverside area? So first of all, thank you so much for providing some information on the area. I have a fantastic resource for you that I built myself. It is called Videographers Connect. It is a free Facebook group. At the time of recording this video, it has over 13,000 videographers in it. All you need to do is go in there and post the job, post the location, say what you need, and we'll find you people in there. There's so many videographers all over the place. I guarantee you, especially within the US, you're going to find somebody, but we also have people internationally as well. Videographers Connect on Facebook. It is linked to down below. One of the best places you can go. Now, if you don't want to go there, which I would highly recommend you go there first, here's what I would do first. One, I would go to Google and I would type in photographer in whatever city. Look at the ratings and reviews. Who are the top rated photographers? And just reach out to them. And I wouldn't do it through the contact form on their website because then you have to wait for them to get back to you. What I would do is just pick up the phone, dial that number, call them right on the spot. Hey, my name is so-and-so. I have some projects coming through. And as you start to do that, build out an Excel sheet for yourself that you can use as a resource. And you can say, oh, in this area, I have 5 photographers I've worked with in the past, and I like their work and I trust them and I know they do a good job. Maybe leave some notes about how they charged you so you know how much to charge in the future. But start to build out your inner network of people that you can trust and use in the future. I hope that helps. All right, let's move on to the next question. The next question is what not to overlook. What are some of the basics that you definitely shouldn't overlook when doing a video for a client? As in, what are some of the most fundamental things to cover yourself for in the contract upfront that you have them sign? I mean things like retaining rights to your work, being able to post their stuff on your own social media for your portfolio, etc. Are there any other things that might not be straightforward or obvious? Great question. And when it comes to contracts, the first thing I have to tell you is you really need a lawyer. Why? Well, because in every city and state, you're going to have different local laws. And so the only way to make sure that you are working within those local laws is to make sure that you have a lawyer that's familiar with them and going to write the contract as needed. Don't go pulling just any old template off a website and thinking that it's perfectly good to use. It may not even hold up in the court of law if you don't have a lawyer actually look through the legal language in there. One, get a lawyer, make sure they look at it. You're going to spend once and cry once, and then it's done with, and you'll have your contract for the future. What are some things that you should think about in your contract? First thing is a cancellation clause. You should have some sort of cancellation clause that explains if a client tries to cancel with you at a certain point in time, they do not get a refund of their money. For example, if a client were to cancel on you 24 hours out, it wasn't some crazy emergency and they don't even want to reschedule it, what would you do? Well, you really shouldn't give them back their money because you were holding that date for that specific event. And unless you can schedule another event that day with less than 24 hours notice, it's not fair to you. And you're now losing out on money that you had and you had reserved that day day and you said no to other people. So some sort of cancellation clause. I would recommend at least 24 hours out, 3 days out, maybe 7 days out, and 10 days out. Maybe at 10 out, you can say, I'll give you a full refund. But when it gets closer to 7 days out, maybe it's 75% refund. As it gets closer, 50, then 25, then 0. So cancellation clause, first and foremost. The second thing that I would do, and just check with your lawyer on this, is to make sure that there is something that dictates how is the project deemed complete. Like what deems the project complete? Because if I finish a project, send it to the client, say, hey, we're done. This is great. We're all good. And I think we're done. If the client doesn't answer me for 3, 4, 5 weeks, how is the project deemed complete? So make sure there's something that explains how it's done so that if the client just decides to up and ghost you, there's something in the contract so that you can uphold that contract and say, look, the project is done. I completed this. We gave you an opportunity to review it. We gave you an opportunity to give us feedback. There has to be some sort of time limit so that they don't go sit on something for 6 months and not pay you just because they didn't feel like it. So make sure there's some sort of clause in there for that. The third thing I would think about is very much like you said in your question, which was who owns the rights to this? Who can use this footage or this content in their portfolio? Who does this belong to when it's done? For me, I do have a clause that does say that unless we explicitly say otherwise, I am allowed to use their content and their footage in my work. Some clients have seen that or had their lawyers look at it and they say, look, we really hope that you could take this out for us. We don't want to have our footage shown in your work. To which I say, okay, no problem. We'll take that out and we get that tweaked for them. For those clients, we just don't use their footage in our work and that's okay. But for most, by default, we're going to have some clause that gives us permission to use that footage in our future market. So I would make sure that's in there. There's a whole bunch of other things that you probably want to put in your contract, but I would definitely talk to a lawyer about what is allowed locally in your state or in your area. Great question, by the way, and definitely make sure that you talk to your local attorneys so that they understand the state and local laws in your area. All right, next question. The next question is how to find a first client. I am dying, self-employed for 1 year, can't find more clients. Please help. Nothing works. Okay, first of all, if you have been self-employed for an entire year and you do not have a first client, you are not self-employed. You don't have a business because you don't have a client. Let's fix this. First off, if you don't have clients, we need to get you out there and moving. We talked about this a little bit earlier, where clients are either outgoing in the sense that you have to go out and find them, or incoming in the sense that they might be referred to you or they find you through web search and SEO. You're gonna have to pick one to go with. If you're a very outgoing person, if you're good at talking people up and just going to a networking event, that's what you're gonna have to do. For me personally, that's what I do. So I go out to Chamber of Commerce events, I go on Eventbrite, find every networking event in the area. I go to local BNI events, so Business Networking International. It's a networking organization. You can go to Toastmasters. You can go to all sorts of associations in your area. You can simply just Google for business association or business networking in, and then type in your city, and you're gonna find something. I've even done this with people who are in other countries. You will always find a business networking group or association that you can attend. Now, on the flip side, if you are not as outgoing, you're going to have to start to work on your ratings and reviews, your SEO. So that might mean building out a website, doing some search engine optimization on that website, starting to post more content on social media so that people can find you. It also might mean going and asking past clients or anybody else for Google reviews and ratings to build out a business profile on Google. Now, if you don't have any clients at all, if you've never gotten a client before, if you're trying to get those ratings filled out, I would recommend go to people that you've worked with in the past. Who are some people that have worked with you that can speak about your character? Maybe it wasn't in this exact role, but you worked with someone at a past job. See if they can just leave you a review so that you're not left without anything, and that's going to kickstart it. Now, if you just need to find your first and only client, that's when I go through friends and family and I say, hey, I've started a video company. This is what I want to offer. Do you know anyone that you could send my way? All right. And just keep asking people, keep putting it out there into the world, make some content so that they can see that you have a portfolio, because no one's going to want to hire you if you don't have any footage to look at. It doesn't have to be about anything in particular. I'm sure you can go find a local business or a local service or any other organization, maybe go volunteer with a nonprofit and just bring your camera along and shoot something for them. Have some work that people can see and look at. And if you volunteer with a nonprofit, maybe they see that video and one of their board members also works for a another business and they refer you out from there. You have to start somewhere. So it's either making that content and making that search engine optimization energy so that people will find you, and building those relationships with maybe adjacent companies like photographers, website designers, anyone else, or you're going to have to go out and find and build those relationships and be outgoing. There's no other magic wand I could wave to fix this for you. You have to either be willing to go out and build those relationships or create a presence online so that people will find you for those incoming prospects. Great question. Next, this question is, I'm in my mid-30s and trying to break into videography. I'm writing this post for my partner who's trying to break into the videography industry. He's done free branded content work for the past year and a half for small businesses and musicians and has a nice little portfolio built up that he's made into a reel. He's considering creating a simple website to showcase his reel and bio. Does he need this? He's currently making about $65,000 in his current job as a legal videographer, but it's a dead-end job with no possibility for growth. With us having a toddler and another baby on the way, he's really trying to make a career move and find stable work at a company or agency that needs a videographer. Any advice on how he can do this without any experience except his own freelance work? Is it possible to even make as much as $65,000 starting entry level? First of all, huge kudos to you if you are a spouse who is supporting your videographer spouse in their business journey. That is something that's really hard to do, and it's a lonely place to go into entrepreneurship. It's also going to be really hard to take that jump into the deep end, because if you have an existing job that's paying you a salary right now, you're going to at some point have to walk away from that because work will hopefully get busy enough that it's going to take the place of that work. To answer your question, whether or not they can earn more than $65,000, a resounding yes. And if you saw my introduction to this video, you'll see that I've been able to create an over $500,000 revenue stream for myself in just 2 years' time for my business. And that's as a one-man band. I don't have employees that are doing this for me. So it is certainly possible. I think that there's a lot of things at play here, right? You have to have a good niche. And right now, because your spouse's portfolio is in the legal business, you need to start to branch out and get a portfolio in other places. They have footage. I think you mentioned that they have some videos for small businesses that they've been working on for the past year and a half. So that honestly should be a good enough portfolio for them to work with from there. It would just be about making a website. And then I would go back to all those small businesses and musicians. I would ask them for Google reviews. So if they could leave a 5-star review for you. And then I would send a follow-up email and say, thank you so much for the review. I'd really like to work with more people just like you. Do you know anyone else that works in this industry that you could connect me with? Even if it's just someone to get coffee or to get lunch with. And I would start building connections through those people that he's already worked. Another thing I would say is stop doing that stuff for free, okay? You don't do it for free for your job. You shouldn't have to do it for free on the side. If you have years of experience now in doing this, even if it's in the legal world, you are still considered a professional and you know how to work a camera. So stop doing it for free. Something else to keep in mind is if you're only working with musicians, you're going to find yourself in a really tough spot because musicians don't always have the funding. So if you continue to work in an area where they don't have the funding to pay for your services, that's what you're going to get more of. So you need to start to break out of that. I would be working more with the small business side to make sure that I'm starting to meet new people in arenas that are going to have more money to spend on their marketing budgets. But I think overall, yes, it is completely possible to leave your job. I did it myself. It's been quite a few years now. I left in 2013. So at the time of recording this video, it's been 11 years and I have absolutely replaced that income multiple times. It is certainly doable. If it was me, the first thing I would think about doing is just getting a website together. Get a website, get 4 or 5 portfolio videos from those small businesses that you already worked with, start to build that online reputation. So get those past people that you've worked with to leave those reviews. And then from there, start to play off of that and work off of asking them for referrals or if they know anyone. And then ultimately, I'm going to go back to the networking side. I'm going to start joining local networking events. I'm going to start joining local organizations. I'm going to volunteer my time on the weekends and meet other people who are volunteering their time, maybe meet some of the people that sit on the boards of those organizations. That's where I would get things started. Great question. All right, let's move on to the next one. Our 9th question is pricing. I'm curious to know people's opinions of my pricing. I charge $3,500 for 2 sessions per month. This includes 3-hour shooting session, 6 to 8 pieces of short form content, a minute or less for TikTok shorts and reels. My setup is probably the normal advanced content creator setup. These are more cinematic pieces that I'm creating instead of just pointing and shooting. I get a lot of inbound leads, but almost everyone gets turned away from my pricing, although they want my quality of work. From restaurants, realtors, car detailing, billing, it's usually the same answer. I have a few retainer clients at $3,500 rate and are seeing success through this, but I'd like more retainers and the pricing is just a consistent miss. Should I lower my monthly retainer for what I provide above? I know each person's value is different, but I'd like to hear if other people are in the same ballpark. Thanks. Okay, so you've got a retainer for $3,500 and you have a few people that are paying you this retainer. So if you have more than one, there's a good chance that you're making anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 a month if you have 3 of these retainers, which is a really good starting point. Like $10,000, that's a 6-figure business. So kudos to you if you have sold that to a few businesses. Now what you need to do is look at, is there a certain type of business that's maybe spending more money with you? You mentioned things like restaurants and various other services, but like maybe you're finding that one particular industry is willing to spend a little bit more with you. That's where I would start is, let's say, okay, dentists. Dentists spend $3,500 a month with me. Then I need to attract more dentists and less restaurants because they're always saying no, right? So that's number one. Number two is that you need to understand the value of what you're bringing to the table, because there's a good chance that when you get on these calls with them, you're not helping them to see the value in what you're bringing to the table. Like, what does $3,500 get me? I know that it gets me 2 sessions and it includes 3 hours of shooting and 6 to 8 pieces of short form content. Okay, so if I've gotten all this content, like, do I just upload it? When do I upload it? Where do I upload it to? Do I need to write a description? You need to show them the value, because what's happening is you're offering them all this content and just saying, here you go. And they don't know what to do with it because they are not social media marketing experts. So if I were you, I would start to offer up services where maybe you get an outsourced virtual assistant or freelancer overseas at a low hourly rate who can take that social media content that you generate and they will upload and post it for your client. So if, $3,500 got me 6 to 8 pieces of cinematic quality work, but it's also getting me someone who's going to choose and pick when this content should get posted and how it should get posted for me, that's where you're starting to bring the value to the table. So question yourself, where can you bring more value to the table in this offering? It's not about lowering your pricing. You already said that you have sold this to a couple of people. So that means that some people are seeing the value in your work. You just have to work more into what niches and industries are spending that type of money. And you also have to work more into explaining what the value is that you bring to the table, so they don't just see it as, oh, I'm spending thousands of dollars every month on videos and that's it. Like, that's all I get. Make sure that you find a way to bring the value. Don't lower your prices. I don't think you have to. There's definitely people that will pay for it. Fantastic question. Let's move on to the last and final question. Question number 10. How to look for steady work in a new city. I'm 31, single, no kids, and I've been doing corporate video production in my hometown for 8 years. I want to move to a bigger city for more opportunities. My goal is to shift into narrative projects, but I want to establish a network and make some steady income in this new city with my corporate resume first. So how do you look for steady in-house video work? Seems like positions on job boards like LinkedIn get flooded with applicants only to end up being filled internally. So what's a more proactive way of finding work? I'm in the higher ed arts nonprofit zone. My current plan is to research similar organizations in my list of cities and reach out to them personally instead of praying a list will land in my lap. I'm curious how others are going about this and if there are any tricks that I might be missing. I'm not looking for leads, just best practices. I love this question because I also moved to a new city. So I grew up and was born and raised in Baltimore my entire life. And at a certain point in time, I decided to close down my studio and I actually moved to Virginia and had to get started all over again in a new city. So what's the first thing that I do? Well, one, I want to look for people that I should contact. And I'm basically going to make a hit list. It's a giant Excel sheet. I'm going to Google every organization in the area. I'm going to make a list of who I need to contact. Name of the organization, name of the person, phone or email, however I can get in touch with them. Make a hit list of maybe your top 100 people. You can do this on Google in about an hour's time, and that's where you want to get started. On top of that, it is hard to get working in the narrative workspace. So if you have experience in the corporate space, the question is, do you want to stay in the corporate space and get a job, or are you trying to freelance corporate? For me personally, I would freelance corporate, so it gives me some time and flexibility to work on the other things. But if you need to take a part-time job, I I would say that your best bet right now is typically LinkedIn or Indeed, or going to the actual website of the company and looking at their careers page. There's no secret list or anything anywhere else, but if you are trying to get in directly, one of the best lessons I pull from one of the first companies I ever worked with was, in order to find the job, you need to find the hiring manager or whoever's in charge of HR. And then you want to get the mailing address of the company and you want to get their attention. How do you do this? Well, at my old company, we had a copywriter who was applying to a job. And what he did was he went to a toy store, he bought a cheapo little like pirate ship plasticky boat like from the dollar store, and he bought some Monopoly money. And he stuffed the boat full of money and he shipped it to the hiring manager and said, here's the boatload of money that I'm going to make you when you hire me. Unbelievable. He caught their attention and of course he got the job. So it's really important for you to stand out. You can go to these job board listings, but like you said, you're going to be competing with everybody else. So what I would do is make a list of all the companies. You don't have to send them all pirate ships, but there's definitely a way that you could even just get a stack of like fake prop money or Monopoly money and put it in the envelope and say, here's the money that I'm going to make your organization when you start working with me. And then you can write a really nice letter to them and send it to them. There's a lot of other creative ways you could do it. You can even do it with a video and just make an unlisted video on YouTube and get it sent over to them over email. But I think if you're trying to build relationships, you got to start with that hit list first. The second thing I would do is get in with video people in the industry in that area. So you can sit there and Google wedding videographers, corporate videographers, just every videographer and photographer in that area. And I would make a gigantic list and invite all of them out to coffee or to lunch or just to jump on a Zoom call, because you need to meet the video people that are in that area. They're going to have their hands on the pulse of the industry. They're going to have their hands in a lot of other projects and things, and you never know who they're going to know that they could be connecting you with as well. So that's how I'd approach that one. I did this when I moved to a new city, and just meeting other people in the industry in my area was a really great resource for getting in touch with more organizations and more companies locally. In this video, I've answered some big questions from people who want to grow their video businesses. You can make more than $31.28 an hour with the right tips and hard work. I hope my 15 years of experience help you earn more money and get more clients. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Check the links down in the description for more helpful stuff. Stay tuned for my next video where I'll share even more tips about building a video business. Thanks for watching.